How many projects roughly do you guys have ongoing at any one time?
We right now have 20 projects that we consider active.
Active?
So
Okay.
by active, that means, and that was for the calendar year of 2023, although those are still in place. Active means we started that initial blackberry removal sometime in 2023, or it's acreage that we're continuing to steward. So it's in that year 2 through 5, 6, or 7 in the progression. So it's 20 some odd and well over 150 acres of riparian area that we're sort of looking over and directing contractor activity on.
That's a lot of lineal feet or lineal miles.
It's a lot of lineal feet of stream. It is, and that number just keeps going up. I mean, our where the Watershed Council has gone is that the number of projects that we initiate in any given year has stayed pretty steady, but our crack crew of restoration biologists and project biologists are identifying larger project footprints to work on. So we're addressing more acres, more length of stream. And so, I mean, you can put that all together. We're working primarily in rural areas where the parcel sizes and the length of creek that those properties run along is fairly large.
Gotcha. So we've talked a lot already about, in our conversation, about some of the benefits of collaboration. I'll call it collaboration between landowner and Watershed Council. Can we back up a little bit and explain, just for anyone who hasn't looked it up, and I hadn't looked it up, Watershed Council, where does that come from in the first place? And talk for a minute just about your mission as an organization. What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
Where's your money come from? Where do you start? All those kinds of things.
We'll go back to the start of an agency that's now called the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board that really created a proliferation of organizations called watershed councils in the state of Oregon. And it really goes back to the early to mid 1990s. And that was a time when the National Marine Fisheries Service was processing a lot of petitions to have salmon and steelhead populations up and down the West Coast, and a lot of those were in Oregon, petitions to have those populations listed as either threatened or endangered under the Endangered Species Act. At, coincidentally, the exact same time, the Environmental Protection Agency was working closely with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality on a really large number of streams and lakes, but mostly streams and rivers that were not meeting state water quality standards. So you had regulators working in the fish world concerned about endangered and threatened species, and you had organizations and agencies that were really concerned about water quality struggling with the sheer number of streams and the parameters for which those streams were not meeting water quality standards.
Okay.
All coming together at the same time. And so the state of Oregon, really, those agencies and the governor's office got together because they were very concerned about what that might mean for a proliferation of heavy-handed regulations that might force habitat quality and water quality conditions to get better. They came up with an approach to address those concerns, the concerns about fish populations and water quality conditions, through a non-regulatory, voluntary, private lands-oriented approach to restoring conditions, to eliminating those water quality concerns and making progress on the habitat quality concerns for fish.
So really, you guys are government-sanctioned entity.
Yes.
But you have no regulatory responsibility, no enforcement of rules and regulation. You're simply there for the betterment of water quality.
Correct. Really, the angle was, so the counties in which we work designate us as the Watershed Council in our area, which includes most of Jackson County for the Rogue River Watershed Council, the northern part of Josephine County as well. And then our mission really is to engage private landowners, primarily private landowners, on working on projects that will have a really strong benefit to ultimately to habitat for fish and water quality. We look at it slightly differently than that. Our mission really is, we're again working with land management agencies and private landowners as our partners to implement ecological restoration, and then engaging communities around the values of that. Again, it's to turn the tide on appropriate habitat conditions for native fish species, especially salmon and steelhead, and improving the quality of the water in the creeks that flow through these areas.
So the interesting thing for me, and I'll just say this in my own words and you can correct me, I like, as a landowner, I like the fact that you guys, one, are not regulatory, and that's just because you have a similar goal in mind as I do. It's not an adversarial position. Two, I also like that you don't have the backing of a whole bunch of, forgive the term, environmental groups who have other plans for example, conservation easements or control or additional controls that may be a little bit beyond what a lot of landowners are going to be comfortable with. I know you could not have made the progress on Little Butte Creek if your goal was conservation easements and control over private holdings. You guys would not be sitting here probably. For me, I really like the end goal outcome of better water, better property, landowner and organization working together. That's how I see it in an oversimplification of it, and kind of a neutral party. Like you guys, you don't have a political backing or a big funding backing from some land trust somewhere who has some overarching goal. Like to me, it's a very clean as this can get kind of scenario. So I like that. That's part of the reason we wanted to be involved with your organization, because I feel like that's kind of where we stand as well. We want to encourage farming, we want to encourage land ownership, we want to encourage good stewardship practices across all of those areas, and that's what it seems like you guys are. Your goal is stewardship, land stewardship, water stewardship, and you guys just happen to be originally sanctioned by a government. I don't know what the right term is, but much of your funding comes from public sources.
It does, yeah. And I did not really touch on the funding end, but we really are, this is expensive work.
Yeah.
Our budget, we've got 20 active projects. Our annual budget fluctuates between, $1.5 million and $3 million a year, depending on what we're doing. So that's a fair amount of funding. That funding tends to come from state or federal agencies in one shape or form or another. We do get a little bit of private donations from community members. We'd love to bump that up, but at $3 million a year, we're probably going to be pretty grant focused in terms of the funding that we bring to the table to help our partners. And I like the way that you characterize the relationship that we have with the landowners. They're not our clients. We're not their consultants.
Yeah.
We really look at it as building that partnership. And I think the way that Lance walked through, here's how we develop a project, really speaks to that relationship development. We're partners together to meet goals that we've come up with together collaboratively, which run to the health of the stream, the health of this land, the health of this forest, and the way that the property owner, our partner, would like to use those lands and access that creek.
Well, it seems like you guys are solving the two biggest barriers to landowners doing more stewardship activities with waterways, and that's knowledge and finances. Like we talked about earlier, there's not a great ROI. You're not going to increase your cow-calf capacity. You're not going to get more tons per acre by stewarding the waterway. You're not, at least in the short term.
Right.
You also, from a knowledge point of view, most people don't have the years of education or the firsthand experience to know what to do. So it seems like those are the two things that you guys are bringing to the table. And frankly, you don't have deep enough pockets to go and buy all the land yourselves, nor is that in your mission.
Right.
So it's a collaborative effort. So we've talked about how you guys can come alongside with the knowledge piece, the finance piece, and one of the things that I remember from our initial conversations was how much of the funding actually passes through to projects. I forget what that number was.
90. Yeah, it's 90%. Most years it fluctuates between, 88 and
And I think that's
91%
an
goes to the ground.
astonishing ratio if you look at these kind of organizations in general. So financially, let's talk about what role you guys play in the funding of the actual project. We know that's a huge barrier to entry in doing these projects. Talk to me about the finance piece. How does that work with you guys?
Yeah, so we reach a landowner. We've got an agreement on what we're going to do collectively, what the
knowledge
project
piece
looks
is
like.
answered. You
The
got a
knowledge
plan put
piece is
together.
answered. The creativity piece is answered. I think that's another thing that we bring to the table, which maybe runs along with the knowledge, but we can come up with some pretty creative ways to make sure we get all of our goals met. And then it comes time to that you're staring at $350,000 that needs to get spent on the ground in order to accomplish the goals of a project.
And that's not an embellishment. That's a pretty normal
No, that's
project.
a pretty low. That's actually, or at this point in time, that's a pretty low number.
Yeah.
For our projects.
Procuring funding, procuring financing for the project. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's identifying grant sources that might that the project would resonate with. And we have a pretty strong likelihood that we're going to receive that funding, applying for it. Our biggest funder is a state agency called the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, and they call for proposals twice a year.
Okay.
We submit the proposal, and 6 months later, if we're successful, we receive the money and we can start implementing the project.
Gotcha.
So 6 to 9 months is what I would say, generally speaking.
You'll have a pretty good idea whether or not the project is going to meet the criteria and a pretty good sense of likely positive outcome pretty much as soon as the plan is created, right?
Yeah, and this is why I chose to work for watershed councils and why I chose to work for the Rogue River Watershed Council is because the whole basis going back to the beginning of the conception of a watershed council, you know, my whole idea on when I first learned about watershed councils was grassroots, community-based. That was the whole idea, is to go from the ground up. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk to someone from the watershed council like myself, if you're a landowner, I'll talk to you, we'll develop a project, I will go write the grants, I will go manage the contractors, and I will be talking to you basically from step one all the way through. I might introduce you to Emily, and sometimes she may talk to you, or vice versa, but you're dealing with very specific people. We're not shuttling you around. You're not lost in the, you know, wake of some larger organization, and that's why I've always been at a small organization like this. We can get a lot of work done, and it's very, for lack of better terms, intimate, and I become usually very good friends with the landowners we work with, if not pseudo family.
There's a big difference in bureaucracy levels, or, you know, like a group like the Nature Conservancy. Granted, they're doing some huge projects and doing some good work, but it's such a large organization, they're not very nimble to jump into 35 acres somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of the niche we have, and I think one of the, you know, better satisfactory things about the career I chose is doing this. That, you know, it's very important work, and the feedback is really great to work with. With I meet a lot of really interesting, nice people. So
yeah,
that's kind of the personal, professional side of things that I think is probably just as important as improving the water quality of the stream.
One of the top reasons I ended up trying to sell ranches instead of selling houses in town or commercial buildings or whatever, not to say there's not great people in those areas, it's the combination of being able to be out here, like-minded people who care about the same things, want the same things. It just makes life easier.
Exactly.
So,
Chris, I want to pick up on a thread that you, in your question, I think you asked, and I missed it the first time around, responding to it, but you mentioned something about, and at the time that the Rogue River Watershed Council starts applying for grants, you have a pretty strong likelihood that you're going to receive them. And the answer to that is yes, and that comes with some caveats around this work. Not all stretches of creek are created equal, in terms of the value that the funding community thinks will come out of their investment, if that makes sense.
So they're looking at rate of return, not so much in dollars, they're looking at rate of return of benefit.
Benefit, ecological benefits, water quality benefits, habitat quality benefits, those sorts of things. And so, we talked before, I think, a little bit about how often are you approaching a landowner about working on a project versus landowners approaching us to work on a project. One of the reasons why we tend to be leading that conversation is because we have a really good sense of stretches of creek that the funding community is going to want to invest in.
That makes sense.
And that, again, runs to why when we submit a grant proposal, we have a pretty strong likelihood of receiving funding because we think we have a pretty good handle on.
Well, you've said not less than 3 times in the course of this conversation, Little Butte Creek, which dumps into the Rogue, which dumps in right above the city of Medford's drinking water.
Yes.
Things like that.
It's those interrelationships,
Yeah.
right? It is.
Yeah.
You have nailed it. You have
Yeah.
nailed it. Hit
Well,
the
and
nail right on the head.
That's the reality of any conservation-based funding is it's all about outcomes, whether it's forest stewardship, whether it's any of the restoration, water-based things, other examples of projects that we've talked about that I want to make sure we bring up here have to do with irrigation as well. And it's not always your guys' organization, but is something that has a very much an impact on water quality. It has to do with flood irrigation and or other delivery mechanisms and or characteristics of the land that really impact water quality. One of you guys want to take that conversation and beat that up for a moment?
You want to take it or you want me to take it? Give it a shot?
Yeah, like you mentioned, we don't necessarily do a lot of irrigation improvements on farm practices.
Mm-hmm.
However, we do get involved when the irrigation system infrastructure impedes fish passage. So that's where we can come in and we can address a fish passage issue, and we can also improve some irrigation infrastructure while we're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been our role historically for anything that has to do with irrigation. For example, where we're sitting at right now, we're working with another partner agency to do irrigation infrastructure improvement. Another thing that we can do is when we develop that relationship with the landowner and we know of an organization who we trust really well that's going to take care of that relationship with the landowner, then we can help bridge that gap and create more opportunities.
You guys can play matchmaker with other sister organizations, right, whether that be like soil and water conservation or those other entities, freshwater initiative, whatever those might be, that have money available at that time for this kind of project. You guys can play matchmaker in that. I know of at least a couple different situations where irrigation delivery systems have been massively improved in the Rogue Valley or in Josephine County on properties with a very positive conservation-based outcome and a huge positive outcome for the landowner who just got a brand new pump system, pivot, whatever that might be. And those again are one-off scenarios, but they happen on a somewhat regular basis, actually. So.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it's becoming a little more systematic, so that it's not so one-offy.
Yeah.
If that's a way to say that, and I think that the relationships with other organizations that do similar work, just not right next to the stream or in the stream, runs all the way to the top of the ridge.
Right.
So if you're a landowner and you're interested in stewardship of upland forests, and you don't know where to start, we're a place that you could call, and again, we could refer you to other organizations that we work with pretty closely. Depending on the circumstances, it might be a really good fit for a landowner.
Well, yeah,
for upland forest management.
I was trying to avoid the forestry conversation, but since you went there, I mean, it all ties in.
It absolutely does.
Between forestry, between stream habitat, between the farming aspect, it all has to work together.
Yep. And we're keenly interested in making sure that those ecosystems get addressed in the same way that the places we work are. We're a staff of 7. and we're pretty close to the stream focused, but we, again, we have those relationships with the community that we can make those referrals.
So describe again kind of your ideal scenario for, I don't want to use the word client, but partner. Like, what is your ideal scenario, just as we kind of wrap up here, so we can come back to that? What's your perfect partner look like?
Oh boy. Well, so
That's a good question.
I'll start framing it, and I'm sure that Emily and Lance will have other ideas to get actually to the sort of characteristics of the landowner, maybe. But Rogue River Watershed Council is particularly interested in working with landowners in the Little Butte Creek drainage, the Big Butte Creek drainage, the Elk Creek drainage, the Evans Creek drainage down around the town of Rogue River, and then in Trail Creek in particular. We do a little bit of work in the Bear Creek drainage as well. Highly urbanized system, really different. So those other 5 watersheds are really the ones that we're most important with.
You do work on the actual rogue itself, the Rogue River?
We don't do much on the actual rogue itself, believe it or not, despite our name. Yeah, I did not come up with the name. We should be the tributaries to the Rogue River Watershed Council. And then landowners, again, we're looking at, I'll start with direct creek frontage, creek running along or through the property, and relatively large acreages. So we're looking, we can put 2 or 3 or 4 properties together. The fewer properties, the less complex it is for us to develop and manage the project.
The smallest lineal feet of stream that kind of makes sense for you guys to work on? And I'm breaking it into lineal feet, not acreage, because that's a little easier to. And if the answer is,
I don't really know if there's a threshold.
okay,
It would depend on if it would, if someone had a small creek frontage and it was next to a larger parcel, and they were interested in getting involved. I don't think I would say no to anyone at that point. I mean, it's just all bundled together,
But obviously, there's a certain economy of scale in the several thousand foot of creek frontage range that is the best financial return for your guys' investment.
Yeah, the number that popped into my head, it was about 2/10 of a mile maybe, but again, it's circumstances are going to drive that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
If you can bundle some neighbors together, but
So the last question I want to hit on again to make it really clear. Again, this is not, what you guys are doing is not a conservation easement. It's not an
Correct.
extended relationship that lasts in perpetuity under title report. This is a short-term improvement project that generally is about a 5-year commitment. And is there any other restrictions imposed on the property owner over that period of time or in the future? What does that relationship look like ongoing?
I would say the only restriction that I can think of is that the landowner will not undo what we just did. So if we put large wood in the stream, and then the following year we come back and they pulled all the large wood back out of the creek, that's the only thing. Or if we got rid of all the blackberry and then we came back and they had logged all of the trees along
Gotcha.
the stream.
Yep.
That's it's just reasonable. It can go to the creek. You use a creek however you see fit. It's on your it's
You're not removing any property rights from the landowner. That's the big thing that with these kind of projects cause more people to say, no, I don't want to talk about even the concept of doing it than anything else that I see.
yeah.
And I think a big goal is creating that relationship with the landowner so that they, after 5 years of treatment or however long, that they see the actual benefits and they're willing to, okay, this is a short-term treatment plan, but we want to create a long-term sustainable restoration project. You're starting to get into more of that, okay, this is good for the environment, great. You want to start to have the landowners see the benefits of the work and continue that stewardship of their land.
You guys ever continue to partner with landowners beyond that initial treatment period where you're going through and doing the work? Is there ever like a continued partnership on a 20-year basis or anything like that?
I think there's a potential for that.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, and the other nice thing is, the contractors who we hire, you know, it starts to become a partnership with them and the landowner. You know, I've had contractors, the landowner has hired them to improve the driveway because we're doing a large wood project.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they're treating the blackberries up on the pasture that they're paying for themselves because the contractors down here treating the blackberries along the riparian.
Well, the creek looks good. Now the rest of my property needs some work.
And at the end of our relationship with on the ground work, we have it now set to where it's manageable for someone. Before it was, like we talked about, it was overwhelming. The cost and the effort would just have been astronomical to the landowner. And so we've set it up to, we always talk about the word resiliency. And, you know, it's kind of become a buzzword these days. And there's good reason. But that's really what we're doing is we're creating a scenario, we're guiding a scenario through the restoration activity that we have, that the landscape becomes self-sustainable again. That's really the key to it all.
And that really is a key. And, you know, I talked about the mission of the organization and our approach to getting to resilience and this term ecological restoration, again, where our restoration biologists and project managers design a project that is going to require some stewardship over time, that 5 to 7 years of stewardship. But at the end of that 7 years, the system will be maintaining itself, for lack of a better term, with minimal intervention. So I liken it to everybody who owns a home probably has to paint that house every so many years. What if the next time you painted your house was the last time you had to paint your house, right? Like it would, you did it in such a way that it would paint itself every 10 years. That's how we're trying to set these projects up. It doesn't mean the landowner's not going to have to do anything, but the lift is going to be really low on maintaining things moving forward because we're restoring the processes that creeks used to maintaining themselves over time for millennia.
Where you're leaving them with an easy button, for lack of a better term. This is your checklist of things that need to be done. This is when you should do it. You're not leaving them without knowledge.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add to why you should work with you guys?
And the benefit is we work with a lot of people who are already managing land.
Yeah.
And so it's common sense. It's common, you know, once we have a conversation and we're speaking about things that are common sense to each other, then it becomes very simple.
I couldn't agree more. Common sense is sorely lacking, but desperately needed. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for taking some time. And
thank you.
Go have a look at this project. We'll